Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to address some questions I've been asked quite often about this. What new printer to get? Actually, I'm not going to say what printer. I never make recommendations. It's different for everyone. But what reasons should you consider in getting a new printer? Obviously, if you just decide you want to get a printer and you haven't had one before, great, go for it. What about if you've got a printer and you're not necessarily happy with it, or you're thinking it could be time for replacement? Is something better round the corner, or is what you've got perhaps good enough? Now, I'm going to go through all the sort of various things, and I will of course finish up with the key issue you need to approach, which is the one that very few photographers ever like looking at, really, if you ask them. First up, your old printer. Is it broken? That's a pretty obvious reason to get one if you decide you still want to do some printing. Repairs for printers can often be expensive. Even for large professional printers like this Epson P5000 here, I recommend getting a service agreement for those because repairs can be expensive when they're out of warranty. Smaller printers, it may not even be worth repairing. So if your printer's broken or has some obvious faults with it, that's often a good reason, or yeah, I hate to say excuse, to get a better printer. And new printers are almost invariably better than older printers. I've seen a few areas where they don't always live up to that, but in general, new printers are better. So if it's broken, that's an easy one. What about if you're finding it difficult to get the inks for it? Now, it is particularly galling when you have a perfectly good printer, but the inks just become harder and harder to find, or more and more expensive, and you get the quite correct impression that basically the manufacturer is only going to support old kit for so long, and there comes a point when you're going to find it very difficult to get inks. Now, you might think, well, I can get third-party inks for this particular printer. That could be worthwhile looking into, but do remember that if you use third-party inks, you may well run into profiling problems in that you need to create new printer profiles for all your papers. Yeah, I don't personally use third-party inks, and nothing specifically against them, but I just find them more trouble than they're worth in some instances. But if you've got an old printer that has worked well and you're happy with potentially changing it over and changing the colour and what that entails, refilling and the likes, then by all means consider that, because you have already spent the printer. When it finally does break, or something in it runs out that can't easily be repaired, then that's the time perhaps you ought to think, well, what shall I get that's a bit newer? What about print quality? Well, print quality is a pretty meaningless term. Everyone asks me about print quality, but no, very few people ever define what they mean by print quality. It could be that you've got a relatively basic printer, and that as you've done more prints, you've started noticing its deficiencies. So you might have got a basic 4-color printer, and you're noticing that the colors are perhaps a bit grainy, that yeah, the prints are it's not as fast, it's just generally it's not working so well. Now, is that because you've literally found some of the limitations of the printer? Or is it that you need to step up your own working of that printer up a level to see whether it's capable of better results? I make a point, normally I test quite expensive printers, but I make a point of testing relatively cheap printers every so often, just as a challenge to see what I can get out of them. So if you're curious, have a look at some of my reviews of cheaper printers and see some of the issues I faced and what I was able to get from them, what the limitations were. It may be that if you just change the software you're using, you'll get better prints out of it. It may be that you genuinely have come up with a limitation of this particular printer and it's time to get something a bit better, which unfortunately I'm afraid will be a bit more expensive, almost certainly, but you're now in a situation with printing experience that perhaps you'll really see the benefits you get from getting a great printer. I do worry sometimes when people spend a lot of money on a great printer and say, well, I'm not very happy with the results. You think, well, yeah, you've bought Ferrari and you're just not able to drive it. I wouldn't dream of, well, not I can afford it, I might dream of it, but getting a Ferrari and just being able to sit into it and off I go, poodle around and drive around. I wouldn't dream of something like that until I knew, until I had some experience of how to drive a high performance car. Same goes for cameras, same goes for lots of other kit as well. But yes, definitely printers. To get the best out of the better printers, you need the skill and experience to use it. Maybe your printing experience has led you to a point where you can get that. Maybe it hasn't, and that's something to be wary of. What about print speed? I go, well, it's taking far too long to print these. Why? What else are you doing? Are you doing this as a business? In which case, if you're looking for a printer for a business, let's say printing greetings cards or something like that, you will find that none of the normal photo printers are really aimed at high throughput. They're not designed to be just stacked up with a load of blank cards and off you go and they just print out. They are meant to be done in relatively low volumes. Maybe with photo paper you can put a few sheets in, but you start putting card in and things like that and the printing, it doesn't work. So if you're thinking about it for a business purpose, your considerations need to go looking at the business and what you're doing. And remember that once you start producing things at volume, you become more of a fulfillment business in that you're spending far more of your time packaging stuff up, taking it to the post or couriers, collecting it, and actually arranging delivery and the business management side of things. So just because you've got a printer and you think, well, this is a bit too slow, I need a faster printer, think about the business. That's if you're using it for business rather than just your own personal printing. But I've touched on several times about print quality. As I said, it's an amorphous term that people use, and if somebody says, I want a high quality printer without any other things, I'll just tell them to buy an Epson P20000. Now, the fact that it wouldn't fit in this house and it's cost you £10,000 or something like that is neither here nor there. You asked me about getting a good printer, I've told you. If you'd have said, I need it to fit on a desktop, I might have said, well, you need to look at XYZ, consider these sorts of printers. But you need to constrain it. And one of the things about print quality, as I mentioned, is it your experience? Is the printer really the problem? How about colour management? Are you properly using printer profiles? Are your general setup, your editing software, how you've got things done, is that all optimized? Are you sure that the printer and the prints coming out of it really are the weak part of the chain? Because it is a chain from photography right through to printing, to a print coming out. It is, and there can be weak links in that chain. So have you got your monitors calibrated? You need to do monitor calibration even if you just work in black and white. Now, if you're interested in black and white, I would say that unfortunately black and white is more difficult for printers to do a good job of than it is for colour. We are very much attuned to noticing faint colour tints in black and white images. There may even be a slight residual one in this video from how I've set things up. But I know that if I want to make a good quality black and white print, I generally need a better quality printer to manage it. Cheaper printers have difficulty with good black and white. Colour, they can manage. Of course, if you want to print this size, you will need a big, suitably large printer. This was done on a 24-inch printer, one that certainly wouldn't fit in the office here. Well, it would if I moved everything else out. But I've got a review of this, the Epson P7500. I've got lots of other large format printer reviews. They tend to be my older written reviews rather than necessarily videos. But if you want to make big prints, then if your experience is of making small prints on small printers, then you have a lot of other things to do other than just to buy a big printer. So is your software up to it? You need to calibrate your screen. This iMac here, which I've got just for testing, this screen here is connected as an external monitor here. Now this is a hardware monitor, this is a BenQ monitor, really nice monitor. This is one I'd be happy editing on. It's a wide gamut monitor. So if you don't know what I mean by a wide gamut monitor already, there are areas you're going to need to perhaps look into. Yeah, you can make nice pictures from, certainly from something like this iMac. It's a few years old, this iMac. I've put the latest Mac system on it to test things, but it's, I say, it's not new. But you still need to work and get it calibrated to get the best results. Now, I've got lots of other stuff about making screens and prints look similar to some degree, and how to get the good results out of it. But it's all experience that comes. So perhaps, as I say, your old printer, you genuinely have got as far as you can go with it. I'm going to say that quite often when people ask me that, and I ask them what the rest of their setup is, I can think of loads of other things they could do before necessarily getting another printer. Buying another printer is one of those bits of photography that really is a bit like, well, you know, if I buy a better camera, will my pictures get better? Well, maybe, if you get a good lens and you know how to use it. And it's always that bit there about knowing how to use it. So, yeah, you might even decide for large prints that you're going to send your images out. Even that, to get the best results from an external printing service, requires colour management. It requires you to be able to edit your images well so that the images could go off to be printed for you. Doesn't matter even if we're not actually physically printing them yourself. Maybe you've found limitations in that. Once again, is it limitations in your skill and experience, or is it limitations in the print service you're using, or elsewhere? But the real key is to look critically at your whole workflow, from picking the camera up, what camera you use, what lens you use, how you handle your files, how you edit them, the software, what software you use for printing, what software, if other software you use for preparing images for printing. And there are loads of steps and loads of links in the chain that potentially a tweak to those could save you buying a new printer. Yet maybe you still will decide that yes, you want a better printer. Obviously, if your printer's too small, if you've got an A4 printer and you think, well, I want to make some big prints, maybe not this size, maybe just say A3 plus, 13 inch by 19 inch. Perhaps, you know, you want to make prints this size, that size even. Then that's another reason you might think, well, I just want a bigger printer. So it will cost more, but in general, the bigger the printer, the cheaper proportionally the inks are. It's one of the reasons I'm quite interested in looking at some of the new range of ink tank type printers, because potentially they give you the chance to lower your ink costs. I'm seeing that as a bonus, not because it makes for cheaper prints, but it makes it cheaper for you to experiment. And by experimenting is how you learn, you gain experience. There is only so much I find when I do one-to-one personal training in printing and various specialist aspects of photography, like tilt shift lenses and things like that. But when I do that, I almost always find that there are areas you can work with people where they can just build their entire level. And one of the key areas, and this is what I said right at the start, and this is you know the bit that people don't necessarily want to hear, is, are your pictures good enough? Are your photos good enough? Is the printer that you're using, that you're saying, well, this is not very good, are you actually seeing but not admitting that your pictures aren't up to it? Now, no photographer really likes that, and that's the sort of stuff, particularly if you're of a technical bent and you like the software, colour management and all of that sort of stuff, it's very easy to go, yeah, if only I used such and such, if only I did this and spent a little bit more money on this, it would be fixed. Whereas in actual fact, you almost certainly, unless your printer's broken, already have the equipment to produce far better looking prints. Yeah, nothing wrong with actually just buying a new printer as well. It's always nice to get new kit, but you know, buy it for the right sort of reasons. Anyway, I hope that's been of some interest. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask questions. It's people's questions that actually give me ideas for topics like this that people are interested in. So I'm always happy to take questions. If you want to know about any of the particular printers, have a look at the written reviews I've got on the Northlight Images site and the videos as well, because the videos tend to be supplemental to the longer articles. So that's how we set that one up. But thanks for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel if you find it useful, and thank you.